listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma, and I'm your host, Trish Close. World traveler and slightly cocktail obsessed, but in a good way, J.M. Hirsch on the podcast today. J.M. is the editorial director for Milk Street, but he's also an author. He wrote Shake, Strain, Done, and Pour Me Another. That's where the cocktail obsession comes in. He talks about splitting his childhood between the U.S. and Europe, taking a couple left turns with education before eventually landing a job at the Associated Press. He covered crime stories for a really long time before eventually getting into food and drink, and he says that's where the passion really took off. He talks about his journey getting to Milk Street, his philosophy in being an editorial director, and traveling the globe, what he's learned from cultures all over the world. He also talks about why it's important to never stop changing. Here's J.M. Hirsch. My number one burning question for you, right out of the gates, what does JM stand for?
You know, when I was young and clever, I used to say just me, but it actually stands for Jason Matthew.
Jason Matthew.
Yes.
I was going to guess John Michael.
Oh, no, that would have been good too. No, it was this weird affectation I took on when I was young and again, eager. And I thought that it was better if people not know my name. And I don't know why I thought this, again, I was young and silly. And so it kind of stuck and I've had it ever since. So
growing up, people called you Jason.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then at some point you changed it to JM. I love that. And
yes.
I actually like the just me. When I created my little company for myself, it's my name. That's me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, not creative whatsoever. Just me. But I like
exactly.
that.
It's perfect.
I like that. Okay. JM, you are the editorial director currently for Milk Street magazine. We're going to talk about your journey to Milk Street because it's been an interesting one, but you're also the author of 2 books, Pour Me Another and Shake, Strain, Done, all about cocktails.
All about cocktails. Combine some 500 cocktail recipes. I'm done. I have nothing left to say about cocktails at this point. The new one, Pour Me Another, comes out in October, and you know what? I'm good. I've got no cocktails left in me at this point.
Got you. Stick a fork in me. Done. And if people follow your IG, you are all about cocktails. You're kind of obsessed.
I am kind of obsessed. I gotta say, at the end of the day, I like a good cocktail, and preferably out on the dock, but I'll take it wherever I can get it. And I don't claim to be a good photographer, but you get the sunset just right, you get the perfect cocktail, good glassware, and it just lights up and it puts you in a happy place.
So I'm a bit of a hoe for glass. Like glassware, wine glasses, coupe glasses, martini glasses, the good whiskey glasses. I mean, give me a good glass any day and I'm a happy girl.
I have a glassware problem, and so I have all open shelving in the kitchen, and it's in front of windows, and so there are literally hundreds upon hundreds of glasses in front of these windows, and my husband created a new rule that I can only bring in new pieces if I get rid of old pieces, and it's that much of a problem. So I understand.
Yeah, my husband has a similar rule, but I'm like, honey, we need. And you know what is amazing for Christmas? He gave me a set of coupe glasses, these beautiful coupe glasses, and I was just like, I think we've hit a new milestone in our relationship that you're giving me glasses. This is amazing. So I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I can already tell we're going to be friends. So I love this. All right, let's start from the beginning. Actually, quick question. In your IG videos, is that your kitchen?
That is my kitchen, yes.
It's stunning. Yep. It's beautiful.
Thank you. It's been renovated like 3 times.
Nice. Because I'm also a hoe for nice kitchens too. I'm like, I just love a beautiful kitchen. Yeah. Check out my Pinterest. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Where are you from originally?
That's one of the hardest questions for me to answer.
Yeah.
I don't really know where I'm from. I was born in Massachusetts, but my family moved overseas when I was young, and I lived overseas, and then we came home for high school. I did high school in New Hampshire, and then I went back overseas for my education, and then I came back and kind of settled here. And I just happened to end up in New Hampshire long term. That wasn't the plan.
Yeah, you split childhood, right? I mean, you were here, there. So,
Yeah, we lived in Germany. My dad was in a joint operation with Bosch, and so his company sent him over, and we were there for a while. And then I came home for, like I say, for high school in New Hampshire, and then I went back overseas. I went to the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and for my master's, and then I moved to Cape Town for my PhD. And then I realized I didn't enjoy teaching, and so that wasn't a great use of my time. So I came home.
nice.
So a PhD in philosophy isn't all that useful if you're not going to teach. So
I think you're doing okay. So splitting childhood, what was that like? I mean, did you have a favorite? Were you excited to come back for high school?
Uh, you know, I was and I wasn't. I mean, I loved living in Europe, and literally every weekend, my parents would just point the car in a new direction, and we'd go explore someplace, and it was wonderful, and it was a great opportunity to see the world and understand the world, and as well as best as 12-year-old can understand anything, but to get a sense and appreciation for the complexity and the similarities of everybody everywhere, and so. I absolutely loved it. I think though I was probably ready to come home and for high school, and then I very quickly realized no, actually I belong back overseas, and after high school I fled the country again, and no regrets about that. That was probably the best thing I ever did in my life.
I like that. Was food important in your family growing up?
Oh God, yes. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I mean, too much so. We've all battled our weight our whole lives, and but we were that cliche of thinking about not just your next meal, but your next 5 meals,
Yeah.
and
Yes. Yes, honey. Yes. Yes.
and we were also very like weird, especially in the 70s and 80s. People were not, the typical, mom was not cooking Thai food and spanakopita unless you were Greek or Thai. But my mother was doing these things. And so we had very eccentric for the time tastes, and it was wonderful. I mean, and then of course, living in Europe, we ate everything
Yes.
not tied down, and so yes, food was exceedingly important, and sometimes it was very fancy in terms of like doing Thai cooking in the 80s, and sometimes it was really trashy. And one of my favorite awful memories that my family and I used to do. We used to go to TCBY. Remember those?
Yes.
Yeah, we used to get one of their frozen yogurt cakes and split it 3 ways
Brilliant.
because I'm an only child. and we would just devour that sucker. Oh man, it was good. Trashy, but fun.
Not trashy. I love that. I would come home from school. I'm from South Carolina, and make fried bologna sandwiches maybe like every day. Yeah.
Wow.
I got really good
I
at
love
fried
it.
bologna sandwiches. White bread, mayonnaise, not Miracle Whip because gross, and fried bologna where it's a little burnt around the edges. That's
Wow.
heaven right there. And I mean, that's trashy too, but I love a good fried bologna sandwich.
I don't think I've ever had one. But my after school equivalent of that when I lived in Germany was I would come home from school and my mother would have bought Kalbsleberwurst, which is calves liverwurst. And it's this like liver pate. I mean, oh my God, it's so good. So rich and fatty as hell.
Yum.
It was so good. And I would slather that so thick on a piece of bread, white bread. And then I would have, this is the disgusting part, I would have a massive mug of chocolate milk
Oh
with it.
man.
Liverwurst and chocolate
Oh
milk.
my
I
God.
mean, it was perfect. You know what? I would still kill for that now.
Okay, wait, was the chocolate milk pre-made chocolate milk or did you make the chocolate milk and chocolate syrup?
I made it.
Hmm.
I made it with I think I actually had the powder now that I think about it. Boy, I haven't had that in a long time, but that
Same.
was good.
Same, but I could go for a tall glass of like ice cold chocolate milk right now, but that's
Mm.
made, I make it, not the pre-made stuff because I don't think that's any good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. It's never rich enough.
Never. So you went to school in Scotland, and I read
Yes,
this actually did have a big impact on you, right? Going to school in
it did.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there I was, what, 18, 19,
Hmm.
and yes, I had lived overseas before, but never on my own. And all of a sudden, and this is of course before smartphones and before cell phones,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, I'm just in another country trying to figure my crap out. And it was the best thing I could have done because it really brought me out of whatever shell I was in and really forced me to figure out who I was. I mean, that's always a journey, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but it certainly moved the needle a bit, and I realized I loved travel. I loved exploring the world, and I just loved being someplace other. I think we forget that pushing ourselves outside of where we are, where we're used to, is so good for us at
Hmm.
just such a visceral level. I mean, even just, and it doesn't have to be overseas, it can be just going to see a new town, one state over or something. Uh, but pushing yourself out of what you know and forcing yourself to experience something and make sense of something, it's so good for you, and it forces you to grow and to understand yourself better and understand other people. It was hands down probably the best thing I ever did.
Hmm.
And it set me on a course that's been weird and haphazard at times, but it set me on a course that just changed the course of my life. So I loved it.
Well, it's scary, right? And it feels super uncomfortable when you
Hmm.
are forcing yourself out of your comfort zone. Um,
Right.
a lot of us tend to just like freeze and just say, "I want to go hide in the corner," but because it's uncomfortable.
It is. And the good thing, though, about being, someplace where you're not familiar, you don't know anybody, is you really don't have a choice to go hide in the corner. I mean, you're either going to sink or swim, essentially.
Hmm.
And I just had to figure myself out. And I didn't always do it perfectly, but you learn. You
Yeah.
learn a lot. And yeah, I that is, boy, the number one thing I can tell people, especially kids going off to college now: get out,
Go.
put yourself someplace where you're not familiar
Hmm.
and sort it out. And you're going to grow so much. You're going to learn so much. You'll meet some of the best friends of your life, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved to Vegas at 16 with my family, not just me, from South Carolina. And yeah, I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me, getting out of
Yeah.
this small town of, in
Yep.
South Carolina and moving to Las Vegas at 16 years old.
That has to have been intense.
Super intense. And I had this like complete huge Southern accent too. So walking around, I'm like, "Hey y'all." And everyone's like, "Who is this alien?" Yeah. So yeah, I agree. It is scary, but you do learn a lot about yourself and you're forced
Yeah.
to adapt, which is
Yes,
huge.
exactly. Which is something, in our day-to-day life, we often don't have to do. We get comfortable where we are, we get comfortable doing what we do with the people we know,
Hmm.
and you don't have to adapt as much. And that adaptation, boy, that makes you who you are and
Agreed.
helps you figure out who you want to be.
Agreed. Agreed. Did you go to school for you said philosophy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to law school after that, and then I actually applied and got into a couple places, and something in me just couldn't do it. I couldn't. I don't know why. I
Mhm.
just couldn't bring myself to actually do it. I deferred, and I decided to pursue the PhD. And again, part of it too. I was supposed to go to. Speaking about stupid decisions, I was supposed to go to to the University of Melbourne for my PhD, and I was really torn because at the time, it's during the first free elections in South Africa, and it's when Mandela got elected. And I
Oh.
was watching this whole thing, and of course the UK was watching it very closely, and so I was just fascinated by it. I was reading everything I could, and just completely on a whim, I applied to the University of Cape Town. Now, University of Melbourne, one of the top universities in the field of philosophy that I was studying, top in the world. University of Cape Town, not so much. But Not quite. But I wanted an adventure. And so I was really torn. And I came home for about a month and to New Hampshire, and I kept talking to my parents. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And finally I just said, all right, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, which is go to the University of Melbourne. So I filled out all the forms and I brought it over to the post office, and I handed the letter to the postmaster, and I walked out. I sat down in my car. I said, nope, that was the wrong decision.
Whoa.
And I walked back in, and I knew that, they're not supposed to give you back mail once you give it to them. And so I knew that. And I walk up to him and I said, please. And I thought, well, all right, if he doesn't give it back to me, then, this is the decision I've made and this is what's going to happen. But he gave it back to me.
Wow.
And I tore it up, and I ended up moving to Cape Town like a couple months later.
No way.
And yeah, and it was probably a big part of the reason I didn't go on in academia, but it was a great adventure and a great experience. Again, talk about being in over your head. I landed in Johannesburg on the 20th anniversary of the Soweto riots, the student riots.
Oh my gosh.
And, they're kind of going at it again for old time's sake, as part of the, recognizing it. And I, again, this is before smartphones and everything. And I had made a reservation at a hotel out of this, travel guide or whatever. And, the taxi driver picked me up at the airport, took me there. And he said, are you sure this is where you want to go? And I said, yeah. I know what I'm doing. I've been all over. And he takes me up, and it was obviously a place where you rent by the hour. And so he said, are you sure you want to go in there? And I said, actually, no, not really.
Right.
And so he took me to a different hotel where I promptly collapsed onto the bed and slept for 24 hours and realized how in over my head I really was. But again, best thing you could do.
Right. Because what are your options? What are you going to do? You can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Home.
Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh. And so I just had to figure myself out and get down to Cape Town. I took an overnight train and got down to Cape Town and started a new life down there. And it was kind of crazy, frankly.
Was there a moment for you, though, that you said, this isn't for me? Like pursuing?
Yeah. And I think, it was, again, I say that maybe if I had gone to Melbourne, I would have stayed in academia, but it was a difficult teaching environment. The University of Cape Town at the time was one of the few really, truly integrated universities in South Africa. And you literally had kids coming into class from the townships, whose family members were shot the day before, or, couldn't afford, even the basic necessities for school or for day-to-day life. And it made it, not that my challenges were anything compared to what these kids were going through, but it made it a challenging teaching environment. And I didn't really care for it. And I think I wasn't able to focus on what I wanted to focus on in terms of academia. And so I quickly kind of pivoted to writing, and which had always been a passion of mine. And I started working with, I don't know if you're familiar with the author J.M. Coetzee. And he's a best-selling author, and he's won all sorts of awards. He's a brilliant writer, and he quickly told me what he thought of my writing, which was yet another wake-up call, and well deserved at the time. And so, but I worked with him for about a year, and then eventually came home and said, well, this is kind of silly. I'm not really doing anything or accomplishing anything here. So I decided to come home. And figure out what to do with my life.
Well, is that when you joined the Associated Press?
Roughly, yeah. I came home and I did a zine for a while. I don't know if you remember those. The self-published little magazines that everybody was doing back in the early mid-90s.
Yes. Okay.
I did one of those for a while, and for my 6 months or something. And then I decided I need to actually get serious about doing something with my life. And I was on the infancy of the internet at the time, some chat room. And some guy who worked at the Associated Press office here in New Hampshire was giving advice to these two women who were in college and were thinking about getting into journalism. And he said, yeah, you just come in and you take an application test, a writing test, and, he was explaining the whole process of how you apply to the AP. And, again, in my arrogance and conceit that only like a 22-year-old, 23-year-old can do. I was like, I can do that. And having zero journalism experience. And so I went in and I took the test and I did well on it, except for the sports writing section, which I bombed, and which I kind of expected since I know nothing about sports.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, they actually offered me a job. And they told me that one of the reasons they offered me the job is because I have an analytical background from philosophy, but also because I didn't have a journalism degree. They wanted somebody a little bit more outside the box.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and that was, again, a tough learning curve. You know, it was another one of those things where, wow, over my head really fast. I mean, I think within a week I was interviewing Dan Quayle. God, I haven't thought about him in a long time. And yeah, and then, very quickly on to Crime and Punishment and all sorts of other things. And I had a lot to learn. And I have to say, much like going to Scotland, joining the AP was probably the best thing I ever did for my writing career, because, I say that editing at the AP draws blood, especially when you're young. And nobody cares about your feelings. They care about getting a story right and accurate, And
Yes.
so they would butcher my writing. And that was the best experience I've ever had. It took me probably 4 or 5 years before I could write a national story that would go out without editing, or very minimal editing. And that was such a sense of accomplishment after, 3, 4, 5 years to be able to do that. But it was the best training ground. They beat the crap out of me in terms of my writing. And that's the only way to learn. If people just tell you how wonderful you are, it's not going to teach you anything.
Agreed. I worked in a newsroom for 19 years. And I remember one of the anchors there when I first got hired, and I'm 22 years old, and he's reading my stuff and he's highlighting things on the computer. And he's like, this is a no shit statement. You already said this. You've repeated yourself here. And he took, a 45-second story that I was going to read on TV down to 15 seconds.
Right.
And he's like, I need more. I need more meat. Go.
Yep.
And I was like,
yeah.
Where's the guy that's telling me this was good? Like, I need someone to pat me on the hiney and tell me I'm special, right? But
Exactly.
But you're not going to learn that way. You're not.
No, exactly. If you just turn things in and they tell you that you're great, then you're just going to keep doing the same stuff. And they were brutal, and it was exactly what I needed. So
standards too, right? It's just
right.
They have a standard to uphold.
Yeah, exactly. And you you're doing a job. You're communicating information, and you have to do it in a way that makes sense and that is accurate and fair and clear and easily understood. And that's not easy.
Right.
You think it is, but then when you have to actually do it, and one of the first stories that I had to deal with after Dan Quayle was the deregulation of the electric power industry in New England. And I still can't tell you what the heck it means or how it happened or whatever, but I had to write stories about it all the time. And that's why I always, as now an editor, I only hire journalists. I don't hire food writers, so to speak, because a real journalist can write about anything.
Yes.
And do it convincingly and with authority. And so if I could write about the deregulation of the electric power industry in New England and inform people about what that meant, which I still don't understand what it means, then anybody can write about food as long as they put themselves into it.
100%. I remember going to like a water irrigation board meeting, in the middle of nowhere, and coming back and writing up this story. And someone's like, hey, this line about this clause, what does that mean? And I was like, oh, they just said it in the meeting. So I put it in my story. And they're like, well, if you don't know what it means, the viewer's not going to know what it means. So you have to break it down, and you have to ask, right? That's another thing, I think.
Exactly.
Journalism 101. If you don't know, ask.
Yeah.
Oh my God, ask. Like how?
Yep. I think, I was just in Hungary a couple of weeks ago, and I had hired a fixer who was a very young journalist. And I saw very quickly what what the hang up of young journalists is, that they don't like to ask those questions because they don't want to appear like they don't know what they're
Look stupid.
talking about or don't
Yeah.
know something. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
And no, that's actually your job as a journalist, is to sound stupid when you're asking these
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Mm-hmm.
Explain it to me. And because even if I understand it, I want to understand what you understand.
Right.
And so, and that's a hard one, because you do set yourself up as, sounding stupid, but that's your job. And so yeah, you have to ask those obvious questions sometimes,
Right.
and the not so obvious ones.
I mean, I think two words that I said quite often in interviews was, wait, what? Right.
Yep.
Wait, what? What was that? Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I totally agree. But there is this fear of looking stupid, but you have to get past that,
Yeah.
because again, if you're going to
Yeah.
break something down for a viewer or a reader,
Exactly.
you have to know
Exactly.
all the little ins and outs of it. So I read that you at the AP, you were covering crime, and I was like, wait, I'm sorry, and I had to like read it over again. I'm like, wait, you work for a food? You're the editorial director of this food, but you do cocktails. You covered crime for like a long time.
I did, yeah. So I very quickly got onto the juvenile crime beat at AP.
Wow.
And, I used to hang out with heroin addicts and gangs and stuff, and, the fun stuff. And yeah, it was some intense stuff. I was one of our lead reporters on the Catholic Church stuff for a while. And
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I mean, that, which unfortunately involved the high school I had gone to here in the U.S.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there was a lot. It was an intense period, but my heart, as we say, food was important to me,
Mhm.
and my heart was kind of in food, and I was at the right time, right place, kind of just doofusy, kind of bumbling my way along. But it's true, because at the time that I was interested in food, and considering, like, wow, maybe I could write about this, is the time in the United States when we started to recognize and take seriously the interconnectedness of food and politics and environment and poverty and health, and this kind of intersection of food in our society. And so, just as the world was, or at least in the United States, was starting to take this seriously, is when I started to express an interest in it. And so I started doing some stuff on the side for the then food editor in New York. And within, I want to say, a year or two, I was doing food stories all the time. And at the time, they really didn't know what to do with me, because yeah, I was kind of, I always said I was like kind of the Fox Mulder in the basement of the AP, because nobody really quite knew what to make of me or to do with me. And so, because our food department at the time was recipe only, there was no news, it was a very kind of, I hate to say, it was a little outdated at the time.
Yeah.
And so they attached me to the health and sciences division, where I did a lot of nutrition and health reporting on food. And I did that for a couple of years. And then eventually the AP kind of created a whole new division, the lifestyles division, which was food and travel and entertainment and all that. And they slotted me into there, where I was able to continue doing some of the health and nutrition stuff, but also the celebrity stuff, the food stuff, the cooking stuff, policy stuff, trends, and real news items, and it just kind of opened it up. And I did that until my predecessor at AP retired, and then I took over as the editor, and I was the editor for, gosh, a decade maybe.
Yeah.
Something somewhere along those lines.
And it really set you up for what you're doing now, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's funny. I knew Chris for years because of my job and at AP, and I had interviewed him multiple times. And and I at the time, the AP was going through a lot of changes in budgeting, because as all news organizations are struggling,
Mhm.
and AP was no different at the time. And Chris called me up and he said, "I'm starting something new. And I'm leaving the old company. I'm starting something new, global perspective, so on and so forth. And he said, I'm looking for somebody to run it with me. And I said, well, okay, I'm actually kind of happy at AP, but I'll come down and talk to you. And so we had lunch, and he explained his vision and his mission for the company. And I said, it sounds amazing. I said, but I have to be honest with you. I don't know that I'm your guy. All I know how to do is run a newsroom. And yes, I write about food, but I'm a news guy. And I said, if you hire me, I'm going to run this like a newsroom. We're going to play by the same rules, the same ethics, and we're not going to talk about food around the world. We're going to put boots on the ground because that's how you report on this stuff. And so you better be prepared to spend some money because
Nice.
we're not gonna write about food in Korea without going to Korea and everywhere else. And so he said, no, that's exactly what I want. And I said, all right, well then maybe we can talk. And then here I am. I left AP, and I guess it was 2016, I guess,
Mhm.
and I've been with Milk Street ever since.
I
So
love it when things like this just happen, right? It's like
right,
the
right,
moment in your life that you are maybe ready to leave, or you were like, maybe I'm
right,
not ready to leave, but this opportunity has come in front of me, and I just can't say no,
exactly,
because your vision sounds like aligned with his vision, or his vision aligned with your vision.
exactly. And I mean, the world is both vast and small.
Hmm.
And one of the most wonderful lenses through which to view it and the people in it is food. I mean, it's so intimate
I agree.
and it's so communal at the
Hmm.
same time. And it's rich in history and politics and culture
Hmm.
and caring. And that it was so exciting, the idea of, yeah, we're gonna tell the stories of the world's food
Hmm.
and the people behind it, and we're gonna take it seriously. We are going to take the entire world seriously because everybody has something to contribute to this story. And so that's the other thing I said to Chris. We have to go everywhere. Like, this is not Western Europe. There is some Western Europe, but we're going everywhere.
Hmm.
And we are going to cover the world. And he and I never disagreed about any of that. So that
Amazing.
made it an easy decision. Yeah.
Well, and what I love too, and I think I read this on Milk Street from Chris. Food does bring us all together, right? It's that one
Hmm.
thing that really, truly, we have in common. Whether it's if you can't find it or if you have a hard time getting it, it's still something that brings us together as people,
Right.
and I love that.
Yeah. It's an act of such intimacy. I mean, I am always shocked and thrilled and honored that when I go around the world, people just let me in their houses because they want to share what
Right,
they know about their food.
right.
I find because and I know this sounds awful, but it's so true. If somebody knocked on my door and said, "Hey, I don't know you, but I'd like to come in and watch you make lunch and have you tell me your story," I don't think I would let them in.
No, pack sand, buddy. Like, get out of here. Are you kidding?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but around the world, I am always amazed by the willingness of people to let me into their lives and just share what they know and what's important to them. I was just in Hungary, like I said, and this elderly couple brought me into their home, and we were cooking with paprika, and she was showing me her photo albums of her parents from when they were kids, and they lived in this village of just a couple hundred people. And I was one of the ingredients I was really focused on this trip was paprika, of course Hungary.
Right.
And the guy brought out a shell casing from a World War II, like it was like a foot or two tall and like 6 inches away, and he had converted it into a mortar and pestle, and he's pounding paprika
Wow.
in this old World War I shell, and which presumably the casing was found in the field or something.
Right.
Anyway, these people that they welcome you into their lives and
Hmm.
share what's so intimate and special to them. She was telling me about this recipe that her mother used to make when she was a girl, and it sounded amazing. And we were at the end of the evening, and I said to her, um, "Could I come back tomorrow and could you teach me that recipe that your mother used to make? Because that sounds amazing. I'd never heard of it. And my interpreter, who's Hungarian, had never heard of it. And so it's this, really older thing. And of course, she said, yes, of course, come back. And so I got to go back and learn her mother's recipe, for pasta and potatoes with paprika. And it was amazing.
Man.
So all of it is to say, I'm just always shocked and in such a wonderful way that people are so willing to share. I'm not sure how I would feel if somebody knocked on my door.
Right. But it is a place, it's such a place of vulnerability too, right? When you're cooking something and you share it with someone. And I always think about my grandma, because again, in South Carolina, she would make a lot. And if anybody walked in as we were eating dinner, it was sit down, make yourself a plate without hesitation. I mean, just every single time. But there's something very vulnerable about cooking for someone and sharing like that mother's recipe with you.
Yeah.
And it's so open to criticism, right? She doesn't know what you're going to say about it if you hate it.
Right. Exactly.
But when you do that and you share it with someone and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing recipe. Thank you so much for teaching it. I mean, you probably made her month.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's going to be a story she'll tell for a while. The crazy American who came and insisted on learning her mother's recipe or something. It's it's such a willingness to share of herself and all these people and I'm so grateful for that because it allows us to do what we do.
And I know you also got back just recently from Thailand too.
Yes. Yep.
You've been everywhere. You've been everywhere.
I think I'm up to like 55 countries at this point.
Is there any one culture that sticks out to you? Talking about that willingness to share, to invite you in. Is there any culture that sticks out to you that at the top of your list of just like these people are always consistently welcoming?
Boy, it's hard to beat Italy on that. But
Really?
I'll say that, I have almost never, very few times have I ever gone anywhere and people have not been willing to share.
Amazing.
It's one of the, I've decided it's one of these universal truths about people everywhere is that when you are asking them something, even as intimate as her mother's recipe, but when you're talking about something so important to them and something frankly safe to them as food, and people open up. And very rarely have I encountered people who are not willing to do that. And but that said, Italy is just, it's baked into the culture. Sit down and eat, and it's such a part of the culture. Sit down. We're gonna have some wine. We're gonna have some pasta. We're gonna eat, and you're gonna enjoy it. And that's it. There's no arguing with it. And I love Italy. Oh gosh, I love Italy. I try to get there at least once or twice a year.
Okay, well, it's always been on my list, but you just solidified that. Anybody who says come eat pasta and drink wine with me, I'm in.
Exactly. Oh, and the wines are so good, and the cheeses. Oh my God, the cheeses! I always bring cheese back.
Stop. Oh, that sounds amazing. Do you have a favorite spot in Italy?
I went to where was I? It was why am I blanking on this? Oh, Parma, excuse me. Where of course Parmigiano is from.
Right.
And I had never been there before. And I immediately fell in love with this city. It's very pedestrian friendly. Like most of the streets are pedestrian only. Tons of cool, funky shops and cafes. And I was only there for probably 48 hours, and I desperately want to go back. And to give you a taste of the type of place there was right around the corner from the Airbnb I was at, there was a record / wine shop. And it was a converted house. So it was like all these rooms, one after another. It was kind of like a maze. And it was music and wine. And the owner would just come in, you would come in and he'd say, what do you feel like listening to? And what do you want to drink? And it was just, I could have spent hours and hours there. It was so cool.
There's
and that was the vibe.
amazing. There's a tasting room here, and one of the wines there is called Sound and Vision. And on the tasting notes with every wine, they will list
Mhm.
the song that you should listen to
I love it.
when you drink
I
your
love
wine.
that.
So
I love that. That's
that
perfect.
winemaker, he would probably love that little shop in Parma. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Milk Street Editorial Director. What does that mean? Are you the head honcho? Are you in charge?
Chris is the head honcho. Um, Chris is the head honcho. But I oversee our magazine, which
Okay.
comes out 6 times a year. I oversee our cookbooks. Chris and I are the ones who do the bulk of the travel, and which feeds our television show. It feeds our magazine. It feeds
Right.
our cookbooks. I would say about 2/3 of our content comes exclusively from our travel. If I had, endless time and energy, it would probably be 100%, but, just can't be on the
I
road
get it.
100% of the time.
I get it.
And as much fun as that would be. And so, and that, the same content also feeds our cooking school and to a lesser extent, our radio show.
Mhm.
And, but so I'm kind of at the center of all of that. And so, I have a great team who make sure I'm able to get away and keep the train running while I'm gallivanting around the globe.
Mhm.
But it's definitely a team effort, and could not do it without them. But that's kind of what I do.
And you're running it like a newsroom, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We don't take free trips. We don't. We pay for everything we do. We
Hmm.
pay people we work with, and we treat it like news. And we're going to interview people. We're going to learn, and we're going to report what we learn. And it's as simple as that. We don't make stuff up. We don't take anything for free. We don't. We don't mess around. We always call ourselves students. No matter how much I think I know about Italian food, I don't, and that's why I go to Italy, to learn from the home cooks and the professional cooks who know this so much more intimately than we do, and who can teach me. And
Yeah.
we treat it that way every country we go to.
Right. Well, to me, that is journalism. We were talking about this earlier.
Right.
It's one thing,
Yeah.
you can write on something, but reporting to me means getting the information from a person, and
Yep.
I'm just the channel, right?
Exactly.
I'm taking everything in and I'm putting it over here for you to digest. But yeah,
Right.
but that is journalism.
Yes, exactly. We are the eyes and ears, because most people can't do this, but you can see it and hear it and hopefully
Right.
taste it through us.
Right.
And we're on the ground so that you can have a sense of that.
And that's what I love about the cookbooks, getting right into that, because some of these recipes, like let's just say Thai food, for instance, incredibly
Hmm.
intimidating to me because I'm not familiar with all of the spices. But looking
Right.
at the recipes in a Milk Street cookbook, they're very authentic because
Hmm.
you've been there.
Yes. And one of the things we try very hard to do, so we fully understand. We try to be as respectful as we can to the origin of a recipe.
Sure.
But we also completely understand that the ingredients they have in Bangkok aren't necessarily going to be ingredients that the average home cook in America can get.
No.
And
True.
it's just either it's a quality issue, or it's just a different ingredient that we just can't as readily get here. And one of the things I always try to do on my trips is to ask them how to solve the problem, because I don't want to be, frankly, the middle-aged white guy who comes along and fixes your cuisine, for the home cook in America. That's not my job. And my job, though, is to ask you, well, if you couldn't get this ingredient, what would you do? And actually, I was blown away by one of the dishes I was researching in Bangkok was pad thai.
Mm.
And traditional recipes call for dried shrimp as a kind of key
Right.
flavoring ingredient. And it's not something that is readily available unless you go to a specialty Asian market in the US. And so I was a little concerned, like, how are we going to fix for this? And I was hoping that, a solution would present itself, and actually it did. And what was really fascinating is, so pad thai was kind of a manufactured recipe from roughly, I think it was the early 40s, and it was to boost Thai nationalism. And so, but there were very similar dishes that had existed prior to that. And one of those similar dishes used to use, instead of dried shrimp, it used to use a combination of oyster sauce and soy sauce, which are two very common ingredients in the US. And when I asked about that, because I saw at this one restaurant, the cook wasn't using dried shrimp, she was using these two sauces. And I said, well, what are you doing? And she said, oh, well, originally, before pad thai became pad thai, we used to use these instead of dried shrimp. And she said, but when the push for Thai nationalism came along and we were trying to codify pad thai as a national dish, those are Chinese ingredients. So we stopped using those and we started using dried shrimp, which is a more traditional Thai ingredient. And it was like, that's brilliant. And it solved our problem. We can take the dish back to its roots in a way to solve for an ingredient issue here in the United States. I love it when people can do that for me. To me, that's the right way to do it. And that's the most respectful way to do it.
Respectful, but it's also, you're really getting it from the expert.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And I don't want to make stuff up,
and not coming back and going, I think we can use this instead. Let's just use that. Yeah. No, I love that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I do want to talk about cocktail archaeology because this is, again, you are obsessed with cocktails, but really too the history of spirits and all of these things. This was something. Was this kind of like a side project for Milk Street?
Yeah, it happened. Gosh, let me see. My Shake Strain Done book came out the first fall of the pandemic. That was what, 2019?
It's a blur.
20? I don't know. It's all blurring. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was 20. Anyway, so, and I hadn't planned on writing a cocktail book. I had written a couple of cookbooks when I was younger, and I was kind of done. As you know, it's a brutal process to do these things. And so, but I loved making cocktails. I loved playing around with it. And so I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just collect 25 recipes and I'll just print them up in a, I'll take some photos and I'll print it up and I'll give it as gifts at the holidays or something like that. Right. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That was okay. So how long did that last? Right. And so, very soon I had a contract for the book and so I did that. And again, the book, I wrapped up writing the book pretty much as the pandemic began. And then as the pandemic began, Milk Street had to shift and we had to change a lot of how every company had to, change what we do and how we do it. And so one of the things we started doing was what we called Milk Street at Home videos. And a couple of us would do these cooking videos from home, for our social media. To kind of, keep the conversation going in a fresh way. Mm-hmm. And I started doing cocktails now and again, and they started to, take on a life of their own. And soon that's what I was doing as my Milk Street at Home things. And one thing led to another. And so now I'm the cocktail guy.
Yep.
Wasn't really the plan, but yeah. And I love the history of them. And I really, for my new book, the one that comes out in October, Pour Me Another, it was really a fun exploration of the history of these cocktails. And the core of the book is that people think they understand a liquor. So gin, for example, right. And they think, I'm not really a gin and tonic drinker. Okay, that's fine. But each liquor can actually present itself in radically different ways, depending on how it's mixed and what it's mixed with and so forth. And so you might not be a gin and tonic drinker, but are you an old fashioned drinker? Because if so, you're going to like a gin bijou. And which I believe, if I remember correctly, has sweet vermouth in it and some chartreuse and a couple other things. And it's, it's really delicious and it's rich and it's nothing like a gin and tonic. And so when I realized this, that each liquor can present itself in wildly different ways, I realized that actually the average home drinker doesn't really understand the kind of the pathways that you can take in exploring drinks. They think, I'm really not a rum drinker. Well, maybe, but maybe you also just haven't had it the right way, in a
Right.
way that aligns with things that you do like. And so to pull all that together, I dug deep into the history of a lot of these cocktails, to their origins, because of course they evolve over time. And so I bought all these manuscripts of all these old cocktail books dating back to like mid 1800s, and finding like the original recipes for things that we think we know now,
Right.
and kind of simplifying them, paring them back. And it was a lot of fun to explore. So I call it a choose your own adventure take on cocktails.
Nice.
So if you like a margarita, then you should try this, and if you like this, then you should try this, and you kind of gives you the opportunity to explore things that you might not otherwise realize are related.
Well, and that's what I love about wine also, because as humans, we've been drinking for a long time. Long
Yep.
time, right? Helped us, on the ships back in the day, helping us
Yep.
get through rocky times. So it's
Yep.
definitely historical, which is what I appreciate about it.
Yeah. And that's a lot of fun to dig
Yeah,
into that, and to see what people were doing back then. And then of course there were the dark days of prohibition in the US, where
so
all the
dark.
cocktails were designed, yes, they were designed to cover up the rot gut that people were drinking out of the bathtub, basically. And so those cocktails were a particular challenge to fix for the modern era. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that was happening. People we're doing some really smart cocktails, and it's fun to kind of bring them into the modern era in a way that I think the typical home mixologist could handle.
hmm I will ask you later in my final three about kind of the drink, but what's your favorite? Like, what's kind of like your go-to?
Oh, that's easy. It's a Vucare. Are you familiar with this?
No.
It's it's from New Orleans. I want to say in the 30s is when it dates back to, and it is 1 ounce each of rye, sweet vermouth, and cognac, plus 3/4 of an ounce of Benedictine, which is a very herbal liqueur,
Right.
and then a dash each of Angostura bitters and Peychaud's bitters.
Yum.
And you stir it with ice, and you strain it into a coupe. Perfect drink for your new coupes.
Yeah.
And absolutely fantastic. It's a potent drink. It's almost 4 ounces of alcohol, but I like them strong.
Me too.
And oh God, that's a good one.
Fantastic.
That's probably my daily sipper. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, my rule with cocktails is that I don't want anything that I can like finish in two gulps because it's like
Right.
sweet or it just goes down too
Exactly.
easily. I want it to challenge me.
Exactly. I want to think about it, and
hmm
and 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 I want to notice that it's in the glass,
Yeah, I want to
and
taste it. And that's what
yeah.
I love about especially like whiskey drinks that maybe,
hmm
you have like a big rock because by the time you're drinking it, that first sip and the last sip completely different and every sip in the middle.
Totally different. Exactly. Well, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that your drink evolves in the glass,
It
from the
does.
first sip to the last sip. And it really does change over time. And I am a big whiskey drinker. I in fact, I have on the counter right now, I made this bartender in Budapest a couple of weeks ago showed me how he makes a simple syrup infused with paprika.
Oh,
And then he used that to make a rye old fashioned with chocolate bitters. So chocolate bitters and paprika simple syrup with rye. It was
I
amazing. So I
bet.
made the syrup this morning. I can't wait to cocktail hour now.
Fun. Are you gonna do something with that? Are you gonna do a video on that if it's
hmm
good or okay?
if it's good, yeah. I don't know if I got the proportions quite right for the way he made the simple syrup. I'm gonna find out tonight. But it's cooling now on the counter, so I can't wait.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love a good Boulevardier, just one of my kind of
hmm Oh
classic
yeah.
go-to. And then I love those creative bartenders who are taking their own spins on like the classic
Yes.
Boulevardier and adding different things to it. Super fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and there's so many ways to play. And I tell you, one of my favorite things when I travel is to go to the bar. And frankly, I prefer to go alone. And I get annoyed when people want to come with me because I prefer, I know, I prefer to sit at the bar, and I always want to sit at the bar, and I just want to geek out and interrogate the bartender because they're doing such cool stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm the same way. No, I'm good. You stay here. I'm going to go to the
Yeah.
bar. I always want to sit at the bar because I not only love, especially I love watching the bartender just work their
Yep,
magic, but then also if they're using something in my drink that I've never seen or never heard of, I'm like, "Hey, what
exactly.
was that? What was that?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I want to learn. I mean, that's the fun of going. I mean, of course, the drink is nice too, but I want to
Yeah.
see what's happening.
Well,
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
that's our journalism nerdy side just like
Yes,
coming out
exactly.
full strength at the bar. Sorry, bartenders, we
Yep.
can't help it. It's just in our blood.
Exactly.
I do want to wrap up just a little bit and get to the final three, but I was reading about you, and one thing, I think this was you wrote something for the university that you attended. You remember this?
Oh, Edinburgh. Okay.
It was last year, I believe.
Vaguely. Okay.
You wrote it
Okay.
last year. One thing you said, it was under alumni wisdom. You said, I would have
Okay.
done more and cared less.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I think this is one of the reasons it was so good for me to go overseas and push myself past my boundaries.
Right?
Like everybody, I think at that age, I was always worried about what people think about me, and
Mhm.
and worried about how I'm presenting, how I'm coming off to people. And you know, as you know, when you get older, you realize they didn't care about me. I shouldn't care about them.
No.
And really, I should have just done anything I wanted, whatever I wanted, as long as you're treating people with respect and you're being safe-ish.
Yeah.
Do it, be it, own it, be who you are. And I think I would have pushed myself even harder to try more things, and to just kind of explore myself and the world a little bit more at a younger
Nice.
age. I mean, you get there eventually, but
It's good.
you
No,
know,
that's good wisdom for sure. And I think caring again, as long as you're a nice human, but like
exactly,
just yeah,
exactly.
caring a little bit less.
Yeah, right. If they think I'm silly, who cares? You know
Yeah.
what? I'm sure most people think I'm stupid and silly, so that's okay.
I think you're pretty
Get in line.
fantastic, honestly. I think you're pretty great. And also along with that, I read that the pandemic really did slow you down as far as travel goes, which you said was a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm a homebody. I mean, which sounds stupid because I literally travel the world,
Yeah.
and I've been on multiple continents in the last month alone. But really, when I'm not traveling, I like to be home.
Me
And
too. Yeah.
when the pandemic hit, we were very lucky. And a lot of people were not nearly as lucky as we were. We were lucky that both of our jobs were quite safe, and we were able to do our jobs without risk to ourselves or our families. And so we kind of hunkered down and did home projects, and just kind of nested for a while.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, it was a bit of a reset. It was kind of, in
Mhm.
that sense, it was kind of refreshing. But we like I say, we were very lucky to be able to do that.
People think I'm crazy, but I kind of miss that, like the April at the start of the pandemic,
Mm,
April, because everything was so quiet and we were
hmm.
checking in on each other. I was reaching out to more
Yeah,
people. Um, I was spending more time at home. I don't miss it, but I miss it. I miss that kind of just that
yeah,
feeling of like home is so safe, and I don't know,
yeah.
but I know what you mean. It was a
I
reset.
It was, and there was I think also because it hit during the winter,
Hmm.
and in at least up here, and it was kind of, sounds crazy, but it was a coziness to it, you know?
Totally. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It was cozy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we redid our TV room and hunkered down into it, and I mean, what else are you going to do? You can't go out. You can't go out. Can't do anything. And so it was there. I do kind of miss that coziness.
Yeah.
And it was a weird but kind of strangely nice feeling. And again, we are privileged to have had that experience of it. But it was a good one to have. If you're going to have to go through a pandemic, that was the way to do it.
Yeah. No,
I'd
for
say.
sure. For sure. And cocktails.
Yes, exactly.
On your IG account, you do canned reviews. Like,
Oh, yeah.
is that your
Yeah,
hubs? Is that your hubs in the video with you?
that's my husband, yes. And we do it just for fun every once in a while,
They're great.
usually probably after we've had too many cocktails.
Yes.
And we have, and actually we have an embarrassing number of canned cocktails in our wine closet. So one of our other pandemic projects is we redid a closet off the dining room as our wine and liquor closet.
I
And
love you guys. You
and
sound so, it's like
oh,
so much fun. Oh my God.
we were well stocked, well provisioned for the pandemic. Yeah, we every time I go to the liquor store, I see these crazy canned cocktails. Most of them I know are going to be horrible, and although we have tasted a few that were okay, but I can't resist buying them,
Yeah.
and so we have just this stack of them, and we haven't actually done a video in a while, but they are so much fun to do because we just get a little tipsy, and of course we usually do it in one or 2 or 3 takes, because the first one we're a little stilted and trying to get comfortable, but of course we're drinking the whole time.
Right.
And so by the time we actually get a take that's good, we're probably a little too tipsy and shouldn't be recording anything, but that's half the fun.
There's I do cooking, like some cooking videos on Instagram occasionally, and I'm drinking wine, of course, while I'm doing it.
Yep.
So like the third take, I've probably had, like a glass of wine, and then I'll watch these
Yep.
sometimes back towards the end of the video, and I'm just like, oh no, I can't believe I said
Yep.
that.
Yep.
That's fun though. That's fun. That's super
Yeah.
fun. And what a good sport that he pops on there with you.
Oh, he's willing to do it. Yeah, it's fun. It's funny you say drinking wine through the cooking thing. I did a video. I don't remember what it was. I did some video for Milk Street, and I had a glass of wine, and I'm drinking it as I go, and of course it's highly edited at the end, and people were commenting about how in this 1 minute long video the wine glass, the wine disappears very quickly. And then it goes back up, and then it goes down. And so I'd obviously refilled it, and it was kind of funny.
People, they're like not paying attention to you whatsoever. They're just like,
yeah, exactly.
Look at his wine glass. Look at his wine glass. Look at here, and then now look at it. Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing. Okay, all right, sir. We're gonna wrap up and get to the final 3. Best advice you've ever been given.
Don't stop changing.
Ooh.
And never be afraid of that. I mean, I have to say, I've had many occasions in my life to wipe the slate clean.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrifying. It's intimidating. It's also the best thing you can do is to embrace change and to embrace just starting fresh and starting new. And it's terrifying, but boy, it gives you a whole new perspective on life.
Did someone give you that advice?
Yeah. A friend of mine said, just, if you stagnate, what are you doing? Just embrace it. Just lean in and embrace the change, because that's the only way you're going to grow. And not all the change is going to be pretty or smooth or not even beneficial sometimes, but and the path won't necessarily go the way you expect.
Yeah.
But I have to say I took that seriously, and that's probably been a guiding principle in my life for the last 20 or so years.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's yeah.
My mom used to tell me that's the only thing we can depend on is change.
Mm-hmm.
And so that idea that never stop changing, that means you're always evolving, you're always navigating, right?
Yeah.
But it is
exactly.
scary. It is really scary.
But the thing is, we're gonna have to do it whether we like it or not,
True.
whether we embrace it or not. As your mother said, change is the only thing we know is gonna come.
Yeah.
And if we dig our heels in, I remember it was I don't know, it was this silly little story I remember reading probably in the first grade or something about, the big tree and that holds, stands up against the wind, and then the little wispy thing that blows. And of course, it's the tree that falls down, and it's true. You have to be flexible, and you have to kind of embrace that. And I think when you do, that's when you realize and you see all these opportunities that you never knew were there. And
yeah, I was interviewing so many people during the pandemic all over the place because I kept up with the podcast at my old job in TV news.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did have the decision after 19 years to leave this incredibly comfortable,
Yep.
consistent job to do
Yep.
stuff that I wanted to do. I don't think I've ever been more scared in my life.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Absolutely.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, yeah, no, I left AP after 19 and a half years or something like that.
Right.
And it was the same thing. Because I don't like to do anything, gently, I was getting divorced. I was changing my job. I was wiping the slate clean,
Yeah.
and it was terrifying, but no regrets.
Well, and look at you now, right? You can look back and you can say
Yeah,
that was brutal, but the only way to get through something is just to get through it.
exactly. Just got to go through it and learn, hopefully learn.
Beautiful.
and
We just
and,
got
and look
so
for
deep.
opportunities.
We got so
I
deep
know.
right
Gosh,
now.
what happened to the cocktails?
Oh, love it. Okay. What's your happy place?
Mm, the lake.
You live
So
on a
I have a
lake, right?
cottage. I don't live it. I have a cottage on a lake. It's
Okay.
about half an hour from my home, and on the dock with a cocktail. Or there is, if you take a kayak out and you go through the marsh that nobody even knows you can get through it, and you go through the marsh, tall grass above your head the whole way. All of a sudden it opens up into this pool, this shaded pool, and my husband and I will go out there in kayaks, and we will bring some wine and some books and some anchors, and we anchor our kayaks and we sit there and we read in this completely isolated pool that nobody even knows is there, completely quiet, just wildlife, water, and shade, and it's beautiful. That's what I like to do all summer.
That sounds ridiculous. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That
It
sounds
really is. I know.
absolutely amazing. I love that. I
It
love that.
really is. Yeah.
Okay. In all things food and drink, and you kind of answered the drink, but what do you crave? What always sounds good to you?
Two things. My mother's spanakopita,
Mm.
which is feta and spinach pie. It's
Yep.
Greek. We're not Greek. We have no idea why my mother started making it. No idea. She doesn't remember. We just started making it. And because I grew up mostly vegetarian, that was our Thanksgiving main course.
Aw,
And we would serve spanakopita with mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce and stuffing. And I mean, it did not go together,
brilliant.
but yeah, it was amazing. And we only make it once a year just for Thanksgiving.
Aw.
But I could eat that any day, every day. I absolutely love it. The other thing, and I haven't had one of these in years, but I don't let myself have it because once I start, I don't think I could stop. But really cheap, spongy white bread,
Yeah.
a massive slice of fresh tomato, and really, really, really extra super duper sharp cheddar,
Ooh.
and a little bit of mayonnaise. And that was like the sandwich of my childhood. And I love that.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I
Yes.
have this picture right back here. It is a
Okay.
deconstructed tomato sandwich
Oh, I love it.
because
It's hard to beat a tomato sandwich.
in the South, fresh garden tomatoes, though, do not buy the
Mhm.
crap that's in the grocery store in
Yep.
January.
Oh,
It's
no.
not going to work.
Yep.
White bread,
No.
mayonnaise, tomatoes, salt and pepper. Whew.
Yes. Yep. That's all you need to be happy.
But you add
Yep.
sharp cheddar.
Love the drier, the harder, the sharper, the better. And then a lot of mayonnaise. A lot
A
of
lot.
mayonnaise.
A
I
lot.
love mayonnaise. I love
Yes.
mayonnaise.
Same. I love Hellman's. I make aioli. I make mayo.
Oh
I
yeah.
love
Yep.
mayo. I'm one of those kids that
Hmm.
I love
Oh
mayonnaise.
yeah. I can eat it by the spoonful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
French fries and mayo is like my
Oh
favorite.
yes. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
really quickly. Spanakopita, did she like do store bought phyllo?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. She didn't make the phyllo herself,
because
but she would buy that.
and phyllo's kind of a pain in the ass.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it's horrible to make. I mean, I wouldn't try that in a million years. I mean, to roll anything paper thin, no way. I don't bake anyway. But you just buy it, and over the years the recipe has evolved because my mother is still vegan, and so now we don't use spinach anymore. We use kale, and my mother makes the tofu cheeses. And I'll say, you know what? It's actually, she's nailed it. It's really
Good for her.
So now we actually eat vegan spanakopita as our Thanksgiving main.
I love it.
It's a little crazy.
No,
yeah.
that's not crazy. I like it. And then I heard a bell. Do you have a doggy that's like shaking? A kitty cat? I heard like something. No?
Oh no. That's my ex-wife texting me.
Oh.
And I forgot that I have my iPad gets my notifications as well. So I turned my phone off.
I'm like, oh, does he have a
dog? No, two cats.
Aww.
We are crazy cat people.
Yay.
And we have a flat-eared freak, a Scottish fold, and we have an orange kind of mutt, and they are, of course, the loves of our lives.
Of course. Mine is sleeping on her bed right now, which is my bed.
Of course.
She likes to think, she lets me think it's my bed. It's really her bed.
Of course. Yeah, she'll share it.
Right. You've been fabulous and fun. And I would encourage everybody to follow you on Instagram because you're not only entertaining, but you're teaching all of us something about cocktails, which I love. So thank you.
I try. Sometimes I just drink too much, but that's okay too.
It's okay. You're in good company, sir. You're in good company. Again, thank you so much, J.M. Hirsch, Editorial Director of Milk Street Magazine, and so much more. Again, give him a follow on Instagram and just check out all the fun things he's doing. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. I had such a blast. Thank you.
You've been listening to Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma with me, Trish Close. You can watch this podcast and subscribe on my YouTube channel. Just search Hungry for More, an Epicurean's Dilemma. You can also listen and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.